to make sure we got the mic on quickly because I wanted to talk about how much I love your top that you're wearing.
Oh, thank you. Butterflies.
It's like it's got these sheer sleeves with butterflies on them. You just always have the cutest shirts.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I feel like for the podcast I haven't dressed up in a while, but this is what I'm wearing tonight to the kids show.
That's right. My daughter, listeners, is performing in High School Musical in
middle school.
In middle school. So it's middle schoolers doing a High School Musical. So,
Meta.
I mean, will they understand the deep and complex themes of high school students? I don't know. How deep are high school students really? But
I was a deep one from the age of like 5.
I just remember in that time period of my life that everything was threat level midnight. Like it was like everything was so important.
Mm-hmm.
Just like life or death.
Exactly. Yes.
I couldn't imagine living with those sort of stakes for my entire life. It would be exhausting.
The stakes were possibly high. It was like you either do this or you're going to die alone.
The highest highs and the lowest
You're
lows.
never going to go to college.
Well, there's that with the adults putting all the pressure. I hope kids aren't getting that kind of pressure anymore because that's all BS, really.
Not. Yeah.
But I just mean like the relationships. It's like I will never love again if I can't be with this person, or my best friend is mad at me. I will never recover from this. The fact that they didn't sit next to me on the bus on this field trip. You know what I mean? It's just like,
I mean, I still have those thoughts sometimes. I still have those thoughts like I will never love again, and I'll never recover if I lose certain people in my life. But
yeah,
I know that's probably not true. It's just something I like to think.
Well, I mean, I think we're all a little afraid of losing people for sure, but it's just like it seems like
it's like I'm gonna die if I don't.
Everything was just like the emotions were just like a tidal wave every day. I don't know. So far, other than a lot of sass, my daughter seems to be keeping it together pretty good. She's only 11, so we haven't hit the high school years yet. But I was really worried about 6th grade because 6th grade was fucking miserable for me. Like that was one of the worst times of my life. Like that transition into middle school was painful. I was not cool. I know that's surprising to everyone because I put up this cool exterior where I'm very normal and fit in, but surprisingly, that's sarcasm. I hope everybody is picking up on that. But I really struggled in 6th grade. It was like I would like lay in my bed wishing and hoping for some kind of illness that would keep me from going to school every day. It was painful. But she seems to be okay. She's taking it all in stride. So I guess hopefully that curse will not befall her.
Yeah, hopefully. I hope she'll do well. I mean, for everyone, the grades are different. Like for me, 6th grade was great. 7th grade was a little sucky, and then 8th grade was like when like the depression and the like the body issues kind of came out. I mean, I looked great, but I thought I looked terrible. So for me, it was 8th grade.
Sure. I remember that was probably around the time. I think I always, probably from the time I was like a tween, was sort of conscious of my body and its shape and what shape other people thought my body should be. I think that started really young for me, way before 8th grade. Wow. But I think I really started to take it to heart around probably that time. Yeah. Welcome to the Adam and Andy podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Nicole.
I'm your other host, Sarah.
This is not a podcast where we talk about the stormy nature of our adolescence. But I don't know. Maybe this movie that we watched has us reflecting on the little moments in life, perhaps.
Yeah.
Listeners, today we're going to talk about Paterson. Finally, I feel like everybody's been asking, when are we going to talk about Paterson? And I've been saying it's not up to me. It's the wheel. The wheel has control over our lives, and when we get to do Paterson, and it finally, I think we were being rewarded for our like enduring silence. Like we did silence. It was hard. We made it through. And then the wheel was like, you know what? Let me give these ladies a win. So we're going to be talking about Paterson today. But before we do, would you like to get into some Adam and Andy news?
Sure.
Who would you like to talk about first, Adam or Andy?
Andy.
Andy. Okay. So I actually have some visual aids. First, I'll say I don't really have a lot of new stuff for Andy. I have a few little snippets, but not a whole lot. One big thing that happened is that Andy was in a Corona commercial, a Corona, not coronavirus, but Corona the beer. Remember when Corona used to just mean beer? Have I ever told you about that time? Just sidebar for a second. And listeners were looking at a picture of Andy and Snoop Dogg on the beach with their Coronas. Did I ever tell you about the time we were in Florida with my kids and we were like at this? It was like we were like at a restaurant. We were going to eat outside, obviously, because this was kind of during the. I mean, not that the pandemic's over, but this was still kind of a tricky time to be going to a restaurant. And so there was a pinata nearby at the restaurant for Corona the beer, and my kids were like, "Why did they make a pinata for the coronavirus? That seems." Messed up.
Which kid?
I feel like it was Charlotte.
Yeah.
And then Lucas kind of came over and was like, oh God. Like they were just like really flummoxed. And I was like, guys, it's a beer. And then I began to think about how Corona, the beer, probably is going through it right
suffering. Yeah.
So here we have a little, perhaps a little damage control. They've got two beloved figures in this commercial, Snoop Dogg and Andy Samberg, on a beach enjoying some Coronas.
So does the Corona company ever address in their ads like, we're not the virus, haha? No.
I mean, it's
that'd be bad.
not.
Yeah, that's not good.
It's too soon, maybe too soon. Also, we're still kind of in the midst of it. But Andy looking very much like perhaps he raided the wardrobe from Palm Springs. But I guess that's kind of what you wear. He's looking at this kind of reminds me just how much I love Andy in a tropical print. You know.
Yeah, there was something about his nails though that was like extra special. I feel like he looks maybe like he's lost weight or something.
Oh, now maybe
like in this picture,
perhaps. But yeah, so it was a cute commercial. It's available all over the place. We retweeted it. I contemplated us watching it, but it seemed like doing like a live reaction to a Corona commercial seemed a little strange, so I decided to do that. And then let's see. There's a whole lot else going on. I did read an article recently that where Andy, you remember that bit he used to do on SNL where he was Nick Cage on Weekend Update?
Yes.
There was one episode where Nick Cage actually came on, and they both Nick Caged together.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And there was an article that came out, I guess recently, where Andy said that when Nick Cage showed up, he had not read the script for that bit. He just kind of like showed up and rolled with it. And Andy was just
you mean that Nick Cage had not read the script?
Yes. Like he showed up, they had written something for him. He didn't read it. They just kind of rolled with it. And Andy was like, wow, that guy is like one of the most interesting people I've ever met in my life.
Interesting as in like,
no,
what does he mean by he meant actually interesting?
Yeah,
not
he means like that guy's a great actor and he's really a fascinating person. Like he means it without. I don't think Andy strikes me as the kind of guy who like is never gonna put someone down in that way where they're like, you know, I feel like Andy seems like, at least in the interviews I've seen, that he only really has he's more like a, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it all kind of say it at all kind of guy. But yeah, I think he like enjoyed working with him, but it was just funny to me that Nick Cage just rolled up and was like, didn't read the script, don't care. I'm here for you. What do you need me to do? You just do whatever you do and I'll I mean, maybe he like looked at his lines when he got there. I don't know. It seemed like the bit was rehearsed, but didn't seem improvised. But he didn't show up like with an extremely in-depth knowledge of that sketch, I would say. And that's kind of all I've got for Andy. We don't know what's going on with Andy. He's probably got some projects in development, but nothing currently on there. Oh, actually, there was one thing. A plaque has been placed. I don't have the picture on me right now, but a plaque was put up at the studio where they shot Brooklyn Nine-Nine, commemorating that show. So it'll
Aw.
be up. Yeah, it was really sweet. They put up a plaque so that everybody will always remember that Brooklyn Nine-Nine was shot at that studio.
Cool.
Okay, so moving on to Adam. So I've got a picture, so I'll go ahead and pull that up. So this is Adam posing with various fans at a Arts in the Armed Forces event at
Why are
in
some of their
Pensacola.
faces covered up?
Well, that's because I think some people online who are Adam stans choose to have an anonymous identity. So when they post pictures of themselves, they usually put some kind of emoji or something over their face
And
to
who made
maintain their
this?
anonymity.
Who made
A
this?
fan made it. I can't remember. I saw it going around. I'm not exactly who made it. I don't know exactly who made it.
I was
I
just
can.
verifying that it wasn't at Adam. That doesn't seem like something he'd do.
Gosh, no. No,
Yeah.
someone on Twitter compiled. These are all pictures that were going around after the event of fans just posting, "Hey, I got a picture with Adam Driver," and somebody made this collage of him with a bunch of fans.
It's funny how, like, in some of them he looks like happy and casual, and some of them he looks concerned.
Yeah. So, what I like about this, well, first of all, the event was a Arts in the Armed Forces reading, a stage reading of Lobby Hero. So it was Lobby Hero. You're wrinkling your nose. Do you not like that play?
Think I had to
Is it
do.
Kenneth Lonergan?
Yeah, I did. My monologue to audition into colleges was from
Mhm.
that play. And
Oh, okay.
I didn't like the monologue, but the person who coached me was like, "Do this." So I was like,
Got it.
"Okay."
Whose monologue was it? What was the
Uh,
character's name? You
a
don't remember?
female character.
Okay.
I don't know.
So both Adam and Joanne were in the reading. Reports from fans say that it was really great to watch them act together, and they have really good chemistry. And it seemed like a really it was for only a service member, so you couldn't get in unless you were a service member or a veteran or someone who was married to someone who was a service member. So it was not open to just any fans that got in are either service members or married to someone who's a service member or veteran. So what I like about this little collage is that he just looks like in a lot of these photos just kind of relaxed and happy. Like you can tell he's having a good time. I just like mentally am comparing this to the photos we were looking at like last week where he was at the Burberry event. You could tell like he was like had to be there. Like it was like I have to be at this fashion show, but I don't really want to be here.
Mhm.
And he looked very grumpy and like you can tell that he like enjoyed himself and this is something that
Mhm.
matters to him. And I just think that's cool. That he's able to do stuff like that for that he feels good about doing that he obviously seems to have enjoyed himself. Also, it's nice that he's like just like walking around taking pictures with people. Like, I don't think all famous people do that, right?
A lot of them do.
You
A lot
think?
of them feel like they have to.
Well, he doesn't strike me as like he's being held against his will to do this,
No.
at least in these photos. Maybe at the Burberry show. All right. So other things. I actually have a lot of big news. So there's that thing. There is let's see. White Noise has not been announced, but is expected to be at the Venice Film Festival. So it's expected that we will get White Noise at the Venice Film Festival. Hopefully, Adam will be there, Noah Baumbach, and etc. Greta Gerwig and all those folks. So that is what is expected to happen. So that's cool. So that's something to look forward to if it indeed happens. And also, little thing came out. Okay, so first of all, I think someone tweeted a picture or tweeted an article about This Is Where I Leave You, I think. And the director, Sean Levy, replied to it and said, somebody said, it was somebody who tweeted at Sean Levy, the director, and said, can you release the deleted scenes? Adam Driver Nation wants to see them. And he replied and he was like, I didn't know Adam Driver Nation existed. Can I be a member? And then he basically said there was this deleted sex scene between Adam Driver and Connie Britton This is not new news to everyone, but it was news to me because some folks were like, "Oh yeah, we already knew about this," and they tweeted an article that where Connie Britton had given an interview saying, talking about the scene. Apparently, it was like on an office desk, and now I'm just so highly curious. But Connie Britton said that first of all, she called Adam the king of sex scenes because of all those scenes he did in Girls, and that he working with him was really easy. He wanted to make sure that she was comfortable, and she was like, I'm totally fine. But apparently Sean Levy, the director, was very uncomfortable because it was his first sex scene that he had directed, and he seemed very flustered.
So it's the director's first sex scene, but it's Adam's like 50th or something.
Exactly. And it sounds like I think Connie Britton had also done other sex scenes as well, and so she was not it was not been a big deal for her.
That's funny.
She what did she say? I'm trying to look yeah. I was trying to look for the actual quote about what I think she said something like she called him a sex scene a virgin, Sean Levy, and basically like Adam was like, oh, I want to just make sure you're okay, and Connie's like, I'm okay, so somebody should check on the director. He seems like he's not having a good time.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So there's that, and then the big news. Here's the big news. Are you ready?
Okay.
So Adam has left he's dropped his agent. I don't know if dropped is the right word. Parted ways with his agent at Gersh, which is a huge agency. So I'm going to come out of screen share at this point because I don't have a picture of this. Adam left his agency, parted ways with his agency, whatever you want to call it, and is now only working through his lawyer. So he has a lawyer and this lawyer is a huge entertainment lawyer. So it's not like, I mean, his lawyer is also represents, let me see, I can pull up the names of some of I'll give you a chance to respond to this in a second. So this lawyer also represents Tom Holland, Robert Patterson, Brie Larson, Benedict Cumberbatch, Gal Gadot, and Ewan McGregor. So this is a huge entertainment lawyer. So I have thoughts, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So Adam is agentless.
Is that allowed as my first thought?
Yeah. Bill Murray does not have an agent. Okay. Bill Murray has a phone number that you can call and leave him a message if you want to work with him.
Oh my gosh.
And occasionally he calls people back, even randos. But apparently, like, if you want to work with Bill Murray, you got to call a phone number.
You don't email him?
No, he does not apparently have email. He has a phone number that you can leave a voice message at.
No. I guess he's old, so yeah.
Yeah. He's like, well, here's the thing. Well, first of all, it's kind of shocking for sure, but also, what is an agent's purpose but to get the actor work, right? That's kind of getting the actor.
No, he already has, like, everyone knows who he is. Everyone knows how good he is. Like, he doesn't really need an agent to get work for him. He can get work for himself. Is that kind of the idea?
I mean, I don't want to sound like a neophyte here, and maybe if someone else, my understanding, based on my limited knowledge of this business, of course, you and I are both filmmakers, and so we have some knowledge of this. But we have lots of friends who are actors that have agents. So I am not in the upper echelons of Hollywood by any stretch, but I am in the whatever lower bowels of the entertainment industry that I work in. And my understanding is that an agent gets you in front of people, they get you work. They do negotiate on your behalf for certain things regarding pay and safety and rights and all kinds of other things. So an agent does do a lot for an actor, but it seems like if Adam doesn't need, if people are calling him and he doesn't need someone to get him in front of people. Like, Adam has worked with some of the biggest directors of this generation. And they're looking to work with him, right? So they're going after him. So if he's doesn't need someone to find the work, then what he really needs is someone to negotiate his rates and his schedule and all of that stuff. And I don't know about scheduling, but a lawyer can negotiate the contracts. So if he has a lawyer to negotiate his contracts and the legal stuff, then I guess Doesn't at this point in his career, he doesn't need an agent.
Yeah. Makes
I don't
sense
know.
to me. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like he's so big time that he doesn't really need all that anymore.
I guess
Yeah.
so. I guess we'll see if he stays agentless or if he is ends up at another getting representation somewhere else. It seems like right now the word on the street is that he has decided that he's just going to have a lawyer on his team and that's it. I mean, an agent does take a percentage of the pay as well, so maybe he
Do you
doesn't
think
feel like
that
he needs to
he
do that.
doesn't wanna go to as many press events or something? Like, does the agent is the agent involved in that at all? Or is that more of a
That is again contractual obligation, so I don't think that will go away. I think that like with Burberry, he signed a contract to be a brand ambassador essentially, where he's in commercials and he's doing events. Like he has to show up at certain things. If he's promoting a movie, he is contractually obligated to show up to certain press events to promote the movie.
Mhm,
So I and again, those are contractual things that a lawyer could negotiate for him. I guess he doesn't really need an agent for that. He doesn't need visibility
mhm,
in this business. He has perhaps more visibility than he wants.
mhm.
So that
Yeah.
was kind of the big news in the last 2 weeks since we last recorded. That's the Adam and Andy news.
Thanks.
All right, so shall we get to today's main event?
Yes.
Paterson, 2016, directed by Jim Jarmusch. Um, I don't even know where to begin. I guess first of all, I've seen this movie more than once. So I saw this movie before we started this podcast, and when I watched this during my sort of pandemic Adam Driver haze, where I was like watching kind of his filmography, which kind of led to the place where we are now, where we're doing the show. And when we decided to do the show, this film was one of the ones that was kind of at the forefront of my mind in thinking about movies that I wanted to watch with you and talk about. So, let's just start there. Like, did you enjoy this movie?
I thought the first half was, a little slow, and I didn't really know
Mhm.
where it was going, and the
Mhm.
last half was kind of sad and
Mhm. Oh.
heading for me, so
Mhm.
I didn't actually enjoy this
Mhm.
movie.
Mhm.
I don't know, I guess I was hoping for a feel-good movie
Mhm.
because you said it was, like, it made you feel good, so I was so
Mhm.
I don't know, it
I hate that I gave you too many expectations. I do feel very good watching this movie. Even the ending, and I'd love to talk about the ending. And what are different because my response to the ending is very different than yours, I think.
well, I knew the ending was pop positive, but
Mhm.
the overall feel of the film, to me, it's summarized in one word would be depression.
Okay. I don't agree. And I'd love to dig into this with you. So why don't we just start where do you have a place you want to start with this?
I mean, we could
It's
start at the begin
Sure.
beginning. So he
So
has
mhm.
no, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Just he has a routine,
Mhm.
and we see, like so I think if this movie takes place in 1 week, like
Yes,
1
it
week
is the
out of his
course of
life.
the week, Monday through Sunday, yes, and
Mhm,
then I think we begin on Monday again
mhm,
at the end.
yep. So Paterson is this guy who's named after I don't know if he's named after the town, but he
Well, the
has the
town
same
is
name as the
Paterson,
town.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Paterson, which is, where the poet William Carlos Williams is from.
and he refers to that poet a bunch in the
Mhm.
film as well.
Mhm, mhm,
So he's a bus driver, and
mhm,
he's an aspiring poet, or maybe not aspiring. He writes poems. He doesn't have any intent to share them, but he writes
mhm,
them.
mhm. And
Yeah.
we can discuss, I guess, what makes a person a poet. I think that's part of or an artist, what makes a person an artist. I think that's one of the central themes of this. Um, I think so here's the thing. This is not a plot heavy movie at all. This is a when we were watching this together last night with your partner and everybody was kind of like, "Well, what's the plot?" I'm like, "If you guys are here for a plot, that's not what this movie is." That's really hard for us, I think, because
Mhm.
we've been kind of conditioned for movies to have a lot of plot or have a lot of things that happen or have a lot of conflict even. And that's not really what this movie is about. This movie is about observing one person's life and the people in his life that are connected to him. I think that's kind of what is going on. But then there's a lot of other stuff going on under the surface. And I feel like watching it the second time allowed me to appreciate the what I would call the secret pie of this movie, which, by the way, that is one of my favorite scenes when she is feeding him the pie and it's disgusting and he's trying so hard to eat it for her. I love that so much. But there's a lot of ingredients in this movie that are kind of under the surface that I think are really on a second watch a lot more were easier for me to kind of wrap my head around. When in the beginning you're like, okay, well, what's this movie? Who are these people? What's going on? I feel like my brain was like searching for a plot because I'm not used to just sitting back and enjoying something. Um, so I'll say that. But yeah, so he's a bus driver. He has this wife, Laura, who is also very artistic. But again, all of her art seems to be localized to her apartment. For the
Mhm.
most part, she's
And it's
making
all
curtains.
black and white, usually
Hmm.
circular in nature or squiggly
She's
or
got
curly or
stripes. I mean, there's all kinds of it's lines, black and white lines, squiggles, stuff like that. She's been her. I think one of the things I really enjoy about this movie is watching her art sort of take over the apartment, like or house, where it starts kind of small and you see her painting more and more, and painting the curtains, and it's like all of her work is kind of overtaking the house.
yeah, it stresses
Um,
me out to have that much stuff being added to a place in 1 week. Like, I'm just like,
mhm.
how is it like to live there long term?
Sure. And I think there's a bit of almost, I want to say, magical realism in this movie where we have to suspend. It feels very grounded because the performances are grounded, but there's a lot of other stuff happening here, like the way that her art begins to overtake the house. That is not a normal grounded reality because that it probably wouldn't happen that way. There's the twins, the repetition of the twins. We see all these twins coming and going. I guess if I could God, it's really hard to talk about this movie because there's so much happening. Uh, you know what? I'm gonna stop trying to talk about the movie and maybe talk about the things I liked about the movie. I think that's a better place to start for me. And maybe you can talk about some of the things that didn't work for you or scenes that you remember. I don't know. Let's go back and forth. How about that? I
Okay.
feel like there's like it's just too much for me to tackle this based on what's going on because it's like he gets up, he goes to work, he writes a poem, he, kisses his wife in the morning, he comes back, he fixes the mailbox, and then the day starts again, and that happens
Mhm.
over and over again. But that's not what this movie is about. It's about the interactions between the people. I think that is what this movie is about. So I'm just gonna say the first time I watched this movie, I felt unsettled because I kept waiting for something bad to happen.
And something bad did happen.
It does, but it's not unfixable and it's not the usual drama of like him and his wife have a fight or the dog gets dog jacked, which by the way, I love the dog jacked scene where the guys show up in the car and he's walking Marvin and they're like, "Oh, that dog's going to get dog jacked." And they kind of plant that idea in your head because he keeps tying the dog up outside of the bar every night. Um And so I'm like waiting for something bad to happen. And yes, something bad does happen, but it's like this movie is about it's not about big swings. It's not about big huge moments of conflict. It's about the little everyday life things and the
Mhm.
little interactions we have with people. I think my husband only watched half of this movie with me because he was doing something and then he came and watched the second half, but he immediately kind of latched onto it and he was like, "Wow, this movie is really good at expressing intimacy and personal interactions." And I was like, "Yes, fucking yes." All these little interpersonal relationships he has with people. So it's like I was able to enjoy it more the second time I watched it because I started to realize that not every movie has to be about a bunch of things that are like conflict based. Sometimes it's okay for a nice guy who has a nice wife to just have a nice simple life. And I understand for you that perhaps that scene at the end was very
That's
traumatic, but I think
yeah.
this is a movie. I'm telling you what I think. This movie is about a person having who's a nice person, and even when something bad happens in this movie, it's not even that bad. Like a guy comes to a bar and pretends to and threatens his girlfriend with a gun, but it's a pellet gun. At no like with foam
Oh,
bullets in it.
no,
At
I'm not
no
talking
point
about that.
I
I'm
know you're
talking
not talking about
okay.
that. I know what you're talking about. But what I'm saying is every time conflict arises in a movie where the dog would get dog jacked or a guy would come to a bar with a gun and Paterson would tackle him and it would be a real gun. None of these things are real. All of it is because that's not what this movie is about. Um, I think this movie is about, again, something I love. I think this movie is about art and the artist and how art is everywhere and that we always think of artists as having to have this crazy dramatic extraordinary life, but that art can come from any person and that any person who makes art is an artist. And for Paterson, his life is enriched by these poems that he which is why I think what happens to the poems is so devastating. But his life is enriched by that. And his wife is an artist and her personality is so big that her art overtakes their life. And she's not doing anything with her art either. Yes, she's made cupcakes and she goes to the farmer's market, but she just lives it every day. And he's living it through his poems every day. And then he's running into all these other people who have like he's the guy who's doing the spoken word at the laundromat. And it's like art is in every little thing. It's in watching a waterfall. It's in running into a little girl outside of a building who's sitting by herself. And again, to bring it back to William Carlos Williams, that's what William Carlos Williams' poems are about. The poem about the plums in the icebox. I remember reading that in college and being like, what the fuck is this? It's not about anything. But now, looking at it as a woman in my 40s, I see that it's about celebrating the simple things in life that we connect to on a very personal level. That means something to us, even if on the surface it seems kind of boring. And so to me, this isn't a film about depression. If it's about a film about how even a life that can on the surface seem kind of monotonous is magical and beautiful and full of little moments that are unexpected, like the twins or the conversations people have on a bus or that moment of intimacy with your wife where you're kissing her neck before you wake up in the morning. To me, this is a celebration of how beautiful just like everyday life is. And that's what I see in this movie. And that's why, for me, it makes me feel so good to watch it. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. And then I want you to talk for a while because I feel like I've said a lot of things.
Okay, so what stuck out to me the most in this movie was the relationship. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel like it was a good relationship.
Wow, I am fucking floored by that because they are so in love with each other. So in love and so supportive.
I think that she is in love with him. I think that he says he's in love with her in the poems, but he doesn't ever tell her. Like when they're to me, like it really stood out that he was being so passionate in the poems, and then he never said those things to her. He never shared the poems with her.
He does share his poems with her. Not the ones that he read in the movie, but she's read his poems. She said that she's read his poems.
Right. I'm just saying, like, I didn't hear out loud him saying those things that he wrote about her in his poems.
What about, I actually have evidence to refute that. Because he says, I'm writing a poem. Because I wrote this down because I love this line so much. I'm writing a poem, and she says, "Is it a love poem?" And he said, "If it's about you, it's a love poem."
Yeah, but that's saying
why does he have to say it? He literally snuggles her every morning. When she says she's cold, he puts a blanket on her. He eats her shitty pie. he gives her, they clearly don't have a lot of money. He gives her hundreds of dollars to buy a guitar, which she probably will eventually give up on and move on to something else. I think his actions scream how much he loves her. They scream that he's deeply in love with her, and he supports her art, and he walks the dog that my headcanon is that, and I'm sorry, I'm getting very emotional about this, because like I can't see how you can not look at this man and see how much he loves his wife, because it doesn't matter what people say to each other if they can't back it up with actions, and like his actions are what matter. And my headcanon is that she got this dog, somebody, like, she walked past a box full of puppies, and they were like, we couldn't sell this one because he's an ornery asshole. And she's like, oh, look how cute he is. And he looked at me and I looked at him and we connected, and she brings this dog home, and now they have a dog. I don't think she asked him if he wanted a dog. I think she brought Marvin home, and now that fucking dog is just their dog. And I don't think he likes that dog very much, but he takes it for a walk every night because he loves his wife so
Yeah, I
much.
mean, it's just, maybe it's the way Adam plays it, but there's like, he just doesn't say what he's thinking. Like, he has so many expressions and so many little micro reactions to things she says that to me feel, I don't think you're going to be a great guitarist, or
which is
like,
hilarious because she probably isn't, but it doesn't matter because he supports her right now in what she wants to do.
I just, like, I guess I'm just comparing it to my own relationship, and my partner and I say like everything to each other, and we also show in actions how we feel. And to me, there was a disconnect between the words he was saying and the words he was saying to her. Like, he just, like, if you look at the whole movie, like, he doesn't say that much to her. And for
That's not
me,
true. They talk constantly. Also, I want, is this movie about a person who says everything he's feeling? Have you ever known someone who doesn't know how to communicate their inner feelings, and so they use poetry as a way to communicate who they are inside, or
I've never known anyone
writing,
like that.
or that's like so many people use art all the time to speak to the truth of who they are. And maybe that's why he doesn't want to share his poems with people, because that's too sensitive and too vulnerable. I think the only person that's ever read his poems is his wife. I think she's the only one who's ever read his poems.
There was one scene where he was in the bar and someone was like, does your wife want you to get a phone? And he's like, no, she understands me. And then like the next scene or a few scenes later, she's like, I think you should get a phone. Just come on. And so
because the bus broke down and he couldn't call anity, and he had to
yes,
borrow
no,
a kid's phone.
I get it. But what I'm saying is, if you watch a movie and you see in one scene someone saying, why isn't your wife upset about this? Doesn't she want you to get a phone? He's like, my wife understands me. And then the next scene, it's like, oh, well, maybe she doesn't
I think you read.
understand him
I'm
the
sorry.
way.
I hate to say this, but you read this movie all wrong, like 100%
I
wrong.
read it
You
in
need to
the
go
way that
back and watch it again. You read this movie so wrong. Like, people don't always say what they mean, and people like, when she says, "I think you should get a phone," does she say, "Hey asshole, you should get a phone," or is she like concerned about him because the bus broke down? Like, you have to. This movie is you have to read between the lines, man. Like, it hurts me to see how
I
much of
don't
this I
appreciate
feel
you
like you're
saying that I
missing.
read this wrong. I think that art is subjective and we can read it however we want. And to me, this is not a relationship I would want. This is not a life I would want. I have a routine that sometimes is comforting, sometimes is boring.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with the routine. Um, I just have a problem with the way he is with her.
Okay. I mean, that's okay. I mean, that's your read on it. I'm just really sad because I think this is a really beautiful and sweet movie, and Chris and I were like, wow, that couple makes us appreciate all the intimacy we have in our relationship, and how, like, when you really really love somebody, you support them 100%, even if the thing they want is stupid, like the guitar. And maybe it isn't. Maybe, I mean, she did actually learn a whole fucking song in one day, which was pretty impressive. The way that he, I don't know. I mean, I just,
Yeah, it's so interesting because my partner and I felt the opposite, that we were like, "Wow, this shows us how good of relationship ours is, that we actually talk to each other about all these things and tell each other how we feel." And
well, I don't see them in any kind of conflict about not knowing how the other person feels. Like, that's the thing, is like, at no point do they seem to be not getting what they need from each other. Like, uh she asks him for the money for the guitar, and he, even though he's skeptical about it, he says yes. She is constantly telling him how beautiful his poetry is, and that he should share it with others, or if he's not going to, that he should at least, copy it. And she's right, he should have copied it. But also, she really mourns with him when he loses it.
yeah,
And
no, I don't feel anything about her that is. I feel like she's very
Mhm,
loving. She's very supportive. She's almost a little
mhm,
bearing at times in her support. I know that's something I have to work on, is like when my partner is
mhm,
upset about something, I tend to be very positive, like,
mhm,
well, this is the good. And it's like
mhm.
sometimes they don't want to hear, the
And
good stuff. And
she knew exactly, that's the thing, is I think that they have been, I don't know how long they've been together, but for whatever reason, they really understand each other on a level that, like, when he is upset and she's like, "Do you want me to leave the house? Do you need some space?" And he's like, "No, I think I'll take a walk." And she doesn't take offense to that or anything. She's just like, "Yeah, sure." Like, I don't know. I see a loving couple, and I think that a lot of movies are about couples that don't see eye to eye, and that's fine. That's just totally a story that should be told. But I just found their relationship so fucking charming and beautiful and simple, because not everybody needs to say everything. Like, if you know your partner loves you, like, you guys don't have to say it. You don't have to constantly talk about it. I feel like if you're in a relationship where that has already been established, we're comfortable with each other, we know each other, there is no need to reassure each other. That's what I feel like. That's where I feel like they are with their relationship. They don't
yeah.
need to constantly reassure of their status with each other, because it's unspoken. They already know.
Hmm.
And I honestly think that Patterson is a character who, for whatever reason, is used to keeping his feelings to himself. Maybe even like when the bus breaks down, he has a terrible day, his bus breaks down.
He's
Even
very
like,
sweet with the kids, and he's very
so sweet with the kids.
I think he's a sweet person. I think he does love his wife. I think that he is a very thoughtful and smart and deep person. I guess I just wish that he would have told his wife, like, I wrote this poem today, and this is the poem. I don't know, like, I just, like,
Well, let me
I
put
guess
it
there was
to
a
you
part of me
this
that
way.
wanted it, you know.
Let me put it to you this way. This is something my husband said, which I didn't even realize, is that, again, I want this movie is about intimacy and personal moments. And my husband was like, okay, so we've been dancing around it. Anybody who's seen the movie knows Marvin eats the book of poems. That's
Mhm.
like the big kind of event that happens towards the
Mhm.
end. I didn't see it coming when I watched this movie, but Chris did. Like, we're watching it and he's like, "Oh, he left his book on the couch. That dog's going to eat the book."
Oh,
Like, he
no.
saw it coming.
Oh my gosh.
And when he gets back in the book, like, again, we haven't really even talked about Adam's performance, but Adam's micro expressions in this movie are so just like a masterclass. And like
Mhm.
his quiet devastation, because his wife figures out before he does that the book's been eaten. And
Yeah.
his quiet devastation he like comprehends like what's happened to his poetry
Yeah, that was amazing.
was just like
It was
incredible.
so he wasn't like,
Well,
like, I would have been like,
Chris,
but he just was like,
I was like, "Chris, there would be so much yelling." I'd be like, "This motherfucking dog!" And he's just like, he just gets up and walks away and shuts the door. Because
Yeah.
again, I think he's used to keeping that inside, and the poems are his outlet, you know? But I don't even know where I was going with that. Oh, I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? It was something to do with the
The
poems
the
getting
poems, the
taken.
dog, the him with his wife has, their
It'll come
how
back to me.
they I don't know.
I'll come back to that. What my husband said. He was like this. He's like, this movie feels really personal, and the Paterson shared his poems with us. But even though his wife had read his other poems, because she does reference multiple times his other poems that she's read, or she says things like, your poetry is beautiful, or I really, like, I'd love to read your new poems or whatever. The poems that are in the film, he only shares with us. And then they get destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So those poems are a thing, that a personal connection that we share with him that no one else does. And I didn't really think about that until he said it. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like, those poems lived only in that moment in time. And he shared them with us, the audience, and no one else ever got to see them. You know?
Yeah, to me, that was sad. It was fucking sad.
It is fucking sad. I'm not
Just
going to
thinking about
disagree.
someone destroying all of my poems, I'm just like,
I was devastated the first time I watched this movie when that happened. I want to come to the end, but I want to circle back to some other things first. I want to talk about how the side characters in this movie are just spectacular. Like, all the actors. One of the things I think that makes this movie work for me is the acting, because if you have a movie that's really just about relationships and little interactions between people, the acting has to be incredible. So first of all, you have to have someone like Adam Driver, who is, I want to watch him. I could have lived in this movie for like 3 or 4 more hours. Like, I would have watched Paterson, his life, for the next like month. You could have just given me every week for the next month, and I would have watched the whole fucking thing and loved every second of it. But like, I don't know if you had any favorite interactions, but some of my favorites are the guy who he talks to every morning before he goes on his bus route. Like, it just cracked me up every day when the guy's like, hey, how you doing, Paterson? And he's like, how are you doing? And he's like, oh, my cat has diabetes, and I'm behind on my mortgage payments. And it's like,
yeah.
I just like every day, except for that one day where everything goes wrong,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
he wakes up late and the bus breaks
Yeah.
down.
That was
And
also
that day,
incredibly distressing for
mhm,
me, like, that
the
day
bus
because,
breaking
like,
down,
well,
it was a
everything
disruption
that
to his
day
routine. Yeah.
everything that day
Mhm.
was bad, like, because I like routine, and I
Mhm.
have this routine, and, like,
Mhm.
when something happens, I'm
Mhm.
just like, it throws me off, and so, like,
Mhm.
the having the routine, like,
Yeah.
laid out, and then having the disruption was like, "Oh, no, like, something's gonna happen, someone's gonna die, or, like, something
Its
bad's
movie
gonna
is
happen."
surprisingly tense for a movie that's not
Yeah.
really about
Yeah.
anything, but I'm telling you, if you were to go back and watch it again, I think you'd be able to appreciate the nuances of how we can live in the absence of that. Because yes, it's a bad day, but it's not life or death. And even
Yeah.
again, like, so that's the day. First of all, I love the little, okay, here's another thing I want to talk about. Because as an artist, here's another reason why this movie personally affected me a lot. As an artist and a writer, I am constantly taking in the world around me and like digesting it, and then like putting it to the page, as it were. And sometimes that involves me looking for patterns or connections in the universe that other people might say are coincidental. For me, that's the twins. One of the represents that beautifully for me. That in the morning, his wife, and this is the first scene when they wake up together. She says, "I had a dream last night that we had twins." And by the way, I love those interactions in the morning. I just fucking love them. It's like, it reminds me of waking up with my partner in the morning and that moment of intimacy before the rest of the world like kind of invades your space. And we don't have it a lot during the week because I got to get up and go to work and all that shit. But like on the weekend, that's what it feels like to me when we're waking up kind of slowly. But she says, I had a dream that we had twins. And then he keeps seeing twins throughout the movie. I noticed times where I saw one of the twins in a scene that came later, but no other twin. And then I began to ask myself, like, are the twins really there, or is this just something he's kind of a pattern his brain is seeing in the world? Because as artists, we're constantly drawing patterns, and we're looking for patterns in life. And that's just something that spoke to me as an artist, is that my brain is always looking for patterns and meaning in things that are small, because that's what I do as a writer or as a filmmaker, is to try to add meaning to simple things in my life. You know what I mean? So there's the twins. And then that day where everything kind of goes differently. That to me is another day where it's not just one thing that goes wrong. It's like he wakes up late and then everything else in the rest of his day is completely changed. The guy doesn't want to talk about his problems that day. The bus breaks down. That's the day that the guy at the bar comes in and has the fight with his girlfriend and holds a gun to everyone. That happens that day too. Also, can we just talk about Adam looking completely shell-shocked after he gets up from like jumping on this guy and they're like, "Are you okay?" And he looks like somebody threw a bucket of water over his head. Like he just looks so shocked that he actually did that. Again, it's like these real Paterson feels like a real person to me. He doesn't feel like a character. I feel like I'm watching like an actual person's life. And I think that's really difficult to achieve in a movie, especially with somebody who's like an actor that's very recognizable to me. I kind of put Adam aside when I'm watching this movie, and I just see
it didn't
Paterson the character.
seem like him for sure. Like I definitely liked the character. Seemed real.
I love the bartender that plays chess. The whole time I'm wanting to know who's the other person he's playing chess with. We never see who that person is. Unless I miss something. I don't see who. We only see him doing the one side. We never see the other person. The couple who's arguing, and the heartbroken guy who's like, life isn't worth living without love, you know?
Yeah.
That guy's obviously going through some stuff.
He's an actor as well. I love that joke.
That
with
was
like
so
she's like,
funny.
I am.
I know, that was so funny. The little girl that he talks to, who's a poet as well, who reads him her poem, like, and then she ends up being a twin. I just like this movie is like the structure is so beautiful to me.
Like I thought it was very slice of life for everything except for the interaction with the little girl and the interaction at the end with the man who gives them the notebook. I felt that the little girl interaction and the man who gives them the notebook were very like, this is in a film. This would never happen in real life.
Because it's the magical realism. I don't think that this movie is, I say it's slice of life because it is a look at this one person's life and it's not really plot heavy, I think is what I mean by that. But it's not a slice of realistic life. And William Carlos Williams' poems also have this kind of magical realism to them. So I think that there's a lot of comparison here between that poet and how that poet has inspired the world building of this filmmaker, Jim Jarmusch. Because the little girl and her being a twin, all of that is a serendipitous moment. It's not something that probably wouldn't have, but it's also not outside the bounds of reality. It's not sci-fi. Like he could meet a little girl who's a poet. But and the reason I say that the movie's aware of that, Sarah, is because at dinner when they're talking about the little girl and he recites the poem, she goes, "Huh, that's interesting. It's almost like one of yours." Maybe it is. Did he meet the girl? Who knows? You know what I mean? And the guy at the end on the bench, who we'll talk about, again, I think is another moment of magical realism. But the movie sets it up with the twins and these other little events to let you know that this is a place where magical things can happen in real life. And I'm not talking about Harry Potter, wizard, Jedi magic. I'm talking about like everyday magic. You know, situational magic. I want to talk. Do you have anything else you wanted to talk about? I wanted to move towards talking about the Notebook and what that means and the loss of the
Oh,
Notebook.
go ahead. Yeah.
But do you have anything you wanted to say about some of these other side characters or some of the other?
I mean, I liked them. I thought they were all pleasant and interesting. I mean, again, I liked all the characters. Like it was, the first half was very pleasant. The last half, I was a little bit anxious about what would happen.
I'm sorry that I attacked you about your read of this movie. I think I just wanted you to like it so much because this movie makes me feel so good and it makes me want to go out and create. And I think I just got really upset for a second that you that you didn't feel the same way, and that's not really fair of me. And I can understand why that second half would make you feel bad. And maybe that because you just watched that, since you watched it in half, because
Yeah.
we watched it last night and then you watched the rest
Yeah.
today, I can see how that's maybe where you left feeling.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry about that. I just know that it's because I left this movie feeling so good and like inspired. And I was like, wow, I can't wait to talk all about how inspired we are. And that's not how it went. And I
Yeah.
can't control
I'm
everything. It's
sorry. No,
okay.
I mean, like, I do get inspired by, like, I think part of it was, like, there were lots of elements that reminded me of myself or reminded
Mhm.
me of, like, my partner, but then there were
Mhm.
things that were not like that, and,
Mhm.
like, there was something about the differences that just
Mhm.
kind of was a little disturbing, and it had nothing to do with
Mhm.
this movie or anything
Mhm.
wrong with the
Mhm.
characters, or it was just kind of like, "Huh." Like, it's, like, similar but not similar, and it's just, like, I don't know, like, it was just strange because, like, sometimes I feel like I'm the Paterson character with,
Mhm.
like, aspiring to be a writer, but having, like, a boring job, and or, like,
Actually,
my
that is a really great comparison because 'cause
or,
you've got,
like,
like, a
my
regular person job and you're trying to squeeze in time to write, and it's, like, sometimes really hard for you to carve out that time for yourself. So I can
yeah.
see how that's could be traumatizing to see someone create all this work that's meaningful to them and then to lose it, to have a
Yeah,
dog
and
chew it
then
up.
and also the element of, like, my partner making lots of things all the
Mhm.
time
That's
and,
true.
like,
Okay.
being like, "Wow, like, where are we gonna put this stuff?" Just like
Okay, I
I
didn't
don't
even
know,
think
just
of
like
that.
and
I'm
then
really glad you're sharing that stuff because that's helping me to kind of contextualize your experience of the movie a bit
yeah,
more.
and then, like, also, like, I tend to be very reactive and
Mhm,
very
mhm,
emotional and, not in a bad way, just in,
mhm,
like, a like, she is, like, she's
mhm,
very sweet, she's very
mhm,
caring, but sometimes for someone who is, um, less
mhm,
emotionally reactive, that might
mhm,
be a little bit intense or something,
mhm.
like, I don't know, I just saw bits of
You were
myself in the
you were
characters.
worried that maybe he didn't reciprocate those emotions. Yeah, I see
Yeah.
that. See, it's
Yeah.
funny. I totally saw myself in Laura as well. I feel like we're really getting to the heart of this movie now, guys. At, you know, uh 57 minutes. We're really getting to the heart of this thing. I saw myself in Laura. Like I see myself as the overbearing, like gotta say everything that I'm thinking, like, I have too many hobbies. I have too many artistic interests. My personality and my art takes over the house. Like I have film equipment everywhere. I have fucking my husband is enduring these fucking pillows and our couch of like Adam and Andy. I feel like my art and my love of art explodes outwards. And I also in a way sometimes feel like Laura where I'm a regular person making art and compelled to make art, but I don't know what she doesn't seem to care if the world sees her as being an artist or not. And I think that's actually admirable because I'm constantly concerned about like am I an artist? Do people see me as an artist? At what point does the world legitimize me as an artist? And neither of them seem to care about that. And I think that's really beautiful. So I see myself as Laura with all these harebrained schemes and I'm making pies that are disgusting. Only Chris, we joked about this. Chris would be like, "This pie sucks." He would never, ever choke it down the way that Patterson does while he's drinking, like guzzling water while he does it. And Chris is like my Patterson. Like he is endlessly supportive. He actually doesn't talk about his feelings a lot. Like it's a struggle. Like at this point, I kind of know his feelings, but he will go for weeks internally feeling anxiety or upsetness about something, not about our relationship, but just about something in life. And then like a month later, he'll just tell me like, "Oh yeah, I was like really depressed for like 2 weeks, but I didn't tell anybody about it." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just keeps it all inside, and and he doesn't have a book of poems where he can get it out. Uh, but if he did, I don't think he would ever show it to anyone. He'd show it to me. He'd show it to me maybe, but I don't think he would show it to anybody. So I think that's another way that I really see myself reflected in this relationship between the two of them, where I've got big Laura energy and he's got big Paterson energy, you know? Also,
Yeah,
he kind of has that clock in and do the same thing every day kind of job as well, even though he's not driving a bus, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's elements of both characters in both my partner and I.
Mhm.
I feel like one thing we do well is sharing our feelings. But also like
Mhm.
the kind of we're both are 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 artists as
Mhm.
well. Him not really seeing himself as an artist and me
Mhm.
seeing myself as an artist, but
Mhm.
not really feeling good about it, I guess.
Mhm.
I don't know. So it's
Which is
like
kind of Paterson's problem. And I think this is a
yeah.
great segue. Okay? So they go on a date. She gets a bunch of money selling cupcakes and I imagine blows it all on dinner and a movie. I just imagine she blows all $200 on that date, you know?
Mhm.
And they get home and Marvin has chewed his book to bits. And I don't mean chewed it up like a little bit. Like he has fucking shredded that book.
Shredded. Little tiny pieces. Like
It
it's
is devastating.
and I don't even know what happened until Laura says it out loud. I'm just
Oh,
like,
I knew
"Well,
as
what
soon as
is
I
that?"
saw it, I was like, "Oh no, his book is the dog ate his book."
Like, I was
Immediately.
as slow as Laura. Like, I was
Mhm.
just like I was almost as slow as Paterson. I was like,
Mhm.
"No. No." Like
And just the way that he is you can see him processing it, like, he gets up in the morning, he's sitting up in bed, but he never takes his anger out on her or the dog.
Yeah.
Never does he take it out, which again is something I love about Paterson, and I'm talking about him like he's a real person because to me, he is a real person. The way he she's like, "Come back to bed," and he's like, "Oh, yeah, I'll be back to bed in a minute," and he kisses her hand, and she puts the dog in the garage because she's mad at the dog, and he lets the dog back into the house. He's
Yeah,
like,
and
"Oh,
he's like,
yeah,
"I
well, I
don't
was
like
out
you."
there." That part was funny, but he also doesn't like, she locked him out in the garage, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, well, when I was in there, I just let him back in."
Yeah.
And he doesn't, even though he's mad at the dog, obviously, or feeling bad, he never
Mhm.
like takes any of his anger out on anyone, which
Yeah.
is the exact opposite of how I deal with my anger. But and then
Yeah.
that interaction, so he runs into the, and I'm sorry I don't remember anybody's names, but the guy he runs into on the street who, basically held everybody at fake gunpoint. Um and he's like, Patterson is like devastated, having probably the lowest feelings he's had in a long time. And he's like, "Are you okay, man?" Like he's checking in with this other person. And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, I'll be okay." And then he kind of realizes how sad Patterson is. And there's this moment where these two men, and also to see two men caring about each other is not something we get to see in a movie a lot. Like,
Mhm.
just this gentleness that they have for each other and whatever heartbreak they're experiencing in that moment is just
Mhm.
really beautiful to me.
Yeah.
I wish more moments in people's lives could be like that, where they get there where somebody the whole town seems like everyone's so gentle with each other, you know? Obviously, there's people like the guy behind the bar, his wife comes in and yells at him and all that, and that kinda happens, but anyway, let's talk about the bench, the guy on the bench, which, by the way,
Mhm.
I actually put the subtitles on. I did have a little bit of trouble understanding him, so I actually went back and put the subtitles on. I don't know why I felt compelled to tell you that, but I love the scene. I don't know what he's saying, so I had to go back and but basically, this guy shows up and he's from Osaka, Japan, and they're looking at the waterfall together. This is the moment that truly made me feel the saddest, Sarah. Is like earlier in the film, Patterson meets this little girl who writes poetry, and she asks him if he writes poetry or if he likes poetry. I get the indication from him that he's saying that he also writes poetry, right? He did say something like that, right? Like, I write poetry too.
Yeah.
Or so he
Yeah.
says he's a poet to the little girl,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Then once the book is gone, I think what he's wrestling with is that without this book, I'm not a poet.
Yeah.
Because he's looking at all the books in his little man box, his man room that he's in, and
Man
they're all these
closet.
all the man closet. Thank you. All these poetry books, all William Cullen Williams, all these poets, and he doesn't have anything. He has nothing to show for his art. Like, it's gone, right? Not even his wife is there to. He can't remember it because she didn't read the last 5 poems or whatever. Um, so he's now in his mind, he's not a poet. I'm just a bus driver. Like, when he says, "Are you a poet?" and Paterson goes, "No, I'm just a bus driver." Like, that
Yeah, that
is
was
the
sad.
moment that broke my heart.
Yeah.
And so then and this is
But the
where I
guy called his bullshit.
he did. But Sarah, this is the thesis of the movie to me. He says, "I." So the guy, the touristy, not tourist, but the guy on the bench that he meets says, "I came here because I wanted to see the place that William Carlos Williams is from, and it's and around you, us, we all see it's like simple but beautiful. Like the photography, by the way, in this movie is beautiful. Everyone's
Mhm.
lit beautifully. The setting is gorgeous, even though it's like super simple, industrial kind of town, you know." And he's basically like naming off all these different artists who had simple jobs. Like this guy was a meteorologist and blah 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 blah. And like so what he's saying is just because you're a bus driver doesn't mean you're not an artist. Like artists aren't some particular mythological creature in our minds. They're everyday people interpreting their world however they are and getting something satisfying out of making the art that they're making, right?
Yeah.
And I swear to God, when he gives him the book and he says, sometimes, what did I think I wrote it down? Sometimes a empty page has the most possibilities. Like, I know he lost all those other poems, but like he gets right to work on writing again. And I just think that's so beautiful. And you know how I feel about an empty notebook. It's literally my favorite thing. I have so many notebooks that I haven't even finished writing in them because when I see a notebook, I see so many possibilities. Like this could be my greatest work could happen in this notebook. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I don't know. Did you want to talk? What did I want to hear what you thought about that scene?
Yeah, well, like I said about the girl, it definitely was not
Mm-mm.
realistic that a stranger would be able to tell that he was a poet and have
Mm-hmm.
this notebook that he would be willing to
Mm-hmm.
give away, and
Mm-hmm.
it was very nice, and it
Mm-hmm.
really made a nice ending.
Mm-hmm.
And I I guess I did love how
Mm-hmm.
it ended. Like the week started the
Mm-hmm.
same as the week before,
Mm-hmm.
and like you get past things, like, you move on,
Mm-hmm.
things get better, like
You
yeah,
get a
you get a
fresh
new
page.
notebook.
You get a fresh page, Sarah. You get a fresh page. To me, it doesn't and for somebody who spends too much time, and I'm talking about myself now, for somebody who spends too much time saying, does my work matter? Do my films matter? Do what I write, does it matter? Like if I stop doing this, would anybody give a shit? It's for somebody who agonizes about that far too often. The idea that it doesn't matter because creating the art is what makes you the artist, and learning to, or not learning, but appreciating the beauty in simple everyday things that are around us all the time. That's true art. And
Mhm,
and I know not every artist, that's not their medium, is simple everyday things. I'm not saying that it has to be, but for this story, that to me is the most important thing that the movie is trying to say, which is that you can be a guy who drives a bus and you can never show anybody your poems, and you are a poet. You are a poet.
mhm,
And that
mhm.
is what makes me, that feeling that I felt at the end of that movie is going to sustain me for at least another 3 weeks until I have another crisis about my own art.
And you know what, what else?
Mhm.
Even if he had never written any of that down, he'd still be a poet
Exactly. That's the
because he would have
point.
been thinking those things.
That's the point. The fact that he expressed himself that way is what makes him an artist. And the fact that Laura paints shower curtains and, rugs and
Cupcakes.
cupcakes, she is taking something inside of herself and sharing it, even if it's in a book that no one ever sees. Like you are translating your viewpoint, your point of view of the universe into a physical thing. And that's art. And
Yeah,
that's fucking awesome. Um,
yeah.
I don't know. Did
Yeah,
you have any?
for me, the definition of art, yeah, is definitely, like, just something you make.
Mhm.
Like, no matter what it is,
Mhm.
like if or some idea you have that's guess it's like I guess you don't have to like necessarily like I said, he'd still be a poet if he didn't write it down because he'd still be thinking the words.
We're
I
all
think that's
artists, all of
yeah, I
us.
think
Yeah.
yeah, I really think that art is very broad. You can't just
Mhm.
say like you're not an artist because you don't paint or
Mhm.
you don't write screenplays or
Mhm.
something. Like
Or even because you didn't win this contest, or your film didn't screen at this place, or
or
because you
you're
didn't get this grant.
sloppy or you don't have great
It's not
like
perfect.
precision or something.
Exactly. None of it fucking matters because you can't ever take that away from somebody. The only
So should
Hmm?
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. I'm just ranting about how much I love this movie at this point.
Oh, I was saying, should we talk about her art at all or his poems? Like
Yeah, absolutely.
the actual not quality of them, but
How did they make you feel? I think
the
is a good way to
right,
say it.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
do you want to talk about her first or his poetry first?
Let's talk about hers first.
Mhm.
So, I guess like she had this black and white aesthetic that what wasn't like scary or
Mhm.
sinister, but
It's like
because it was
whimsical.
whimsical, because
Yeah.
it was black and white though, it wasn't as whimsical as it could
Mhm.
have been. It was still like the shapes were whimsical, but
Mhm.
it was still like black and white. So I guess like it made me feel like I liked it, but I
Mhm.
also wish that there was more color. I felt like
Sure.
she was a very colorful person
Mhm.
in her personality.
Mhm.
So I guess like I don't know, I'd want to talk to the
Production
art
designer.
director
Mhm.
to be like, why did you choose it to be like this? Or maybe it was in the script. I don't
Mhm.
know. Not that it's bad, but I just want to know like what they were
Let me tell
thinking.
you why I think they made that choice. This is my interpretation, and I could be wrong. But I feel like it's less about the aesthetic of her art and more about the way that it overtakes everything in their space. And I think that because the rest of their space was kind of soft and earthy and and it did have color in their house. I think
Mhm.
that the black and white is so stark and clear that I think those shapes and colors and designs are really clear and easy to spot in the background. And so
Oh, that's interesting because I'm sorry to interrupt again, but she as a person was very clear and
Mhm.
direct and said what
Yes.
she felt
Yes.
and was very upfront and kind of black and white in a sense that you knew where she stood, you knew
You know
how
what
she
you're gonna get.
felt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she says exactly what she's feeling. Yeah, I think that and that brings me to my point, which is that I think her art is less about the aesthetic of it and more about a like a physical manifestation of her as a person,
Mhm.
which art is in a way a manifestation of us as people. And so again, it's that magical realism of like the art is Laura. This is Laura. And I think it's easy to see it as part of it.
Mhm.
It stands out. And so does
Yeah.
she.
Mhm.
Um, what about Paterson's poetry, which was written by a poet for the film?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was kind of like with the movie, it's like I was unsure at first. So I was unsure the first several lines,
It's
but
hard.
then when
It's
he
hard to like because it's almost like when somebody does stand up in a movie, you're like, okay, is this going to be good? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's
yeah,
hard to get into it at first.
but I liked where it went to emotionally. Like I liked them
Hmm.
even more
Hmm.
than a like not a there is no such thing as
Hmm.
a regular poem, but like I liked that it didn't start with the emotion.
Yes, it gets
Like that
there.
it kind of
Yeah.
built to it.
Hmm.
Like all this is like the foundation for where the emotion will rest. Like I liked that it was started out describing an object or
Hmm.
describing a very specific thing that is solid and real, and then it goes into, like, the more, uh, me 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 metaphorical or
Hmm.
internal, like,
Hmm.
thoughts and
Hmm.
emotions.
Hmm. I think it's very much like a William Carlos William poem without being a copy. Like it definitely has because
Mhm,
that's what his poems are like. They're descriptive. They're like about a red wheelbarrow or something, and then there's like and then it hits you with some kind of line that encompasses the emotion of what that's about.
Mhm.
And I think that also leads me to say, like, what I really love about not just these poems, but poetry in general. I feel like what I love about poetry as a medium is that it can take like a what you would say in a whole novel or a screenplay and distills the emotion of all of that into a single line. And that's what
Mhm.
I think these poems did, and something I really love about it. Um there it one of my favorite, I don't know if you had a favorite, but I think my favorite was the one where he says, you know, "If you ever left me, I would tear my heart out and not put it back." Or what's the one where he says, "How embarrassing?" There's one where he ends
Yeah,
with,
it's that.
is it that
Yeah,
one?
that's that one.
That's my
Yeah.
favorite one where he, like, admits, like, I think about other girls sometimes, but you're it for me. You're the only woman I love, and that's embarrassing." And I just love that admission that my
Yeah.
feelings for you are so intense that they're embarrassing to me. Like, that is so beautiful. I love it. That's my favorite
Yeah.
poem of all of them. I don't know if you had a favorite, but,
I think I liked the first one a lot.
about the matches.
The matches,
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
really beautiful one too. I love how we
Yeah.
can see him working on them throughout the day,
Yeah.
where he, like, adds or changes or something happens to him and it inspires him to add something new.
Yeah.
It's so much about the
Also, I like
process.
that it's his handwriting. It's Adam's, like,
Oh,
real
his handwriting is so
handwriting.
pretty. I love it. It's way better than my handwriting. My handwriting sucks. Cool. All right. Anything else to say about Paterson?
I did enjoy a lot of it. I was stressed at some of it. I was devastated
Mhm.
when the notebook was ripped
Yeah,
up, and
that
I
was
was
tough.
very concerned about I think I was anxious about him taking it out on her or the dog. I
Mhm.
think that that upset me even though
Mhm.
he
He
didn't,
never did. Yeah.
but it still created, like, this feeling in me of,
But that what I'm
you
telling
know.
you is I also felt a lot of tension watching this movie the first time. I would be interested to hear what if anything changes for you if you were to watch the movie again. Because I felt like personally when I watched the movie the first time, I was like, "Oh, okay. That was enjoyable." Like that's how I felt watching it the first time. And I definitely had that feeling of like, "Oh, you know, there's beauty in everyday things." And I definitely got the thesis of it. But I got to say, watching it the second time, like it really the movie really got its hooks on me on a deeper level the second time. And I think part of it was because I was able to let go of worrying about something intense
Happening.
happening. Yeah.
Something bad happening.
I was able to get past that and just kind of live in the moment, which I think this movie is a lot about just like living in the moment.
Mhm.
Um Oh, I one before we go, I just want or not go, but before we wrap up talking about this movie, I wanted to say one more thing, another quote that I pulled. Again, this is after his poems get ripped up. But he says what he says about his poems is that he says they're just words written on water, which is just like a gut punch.
Yeah.
And how fleeting, even if you write something down, there's something kind of fleeting about it, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of water
mhm,
symbolism with, like, the waterfalls and the
mhm,
waterfalls poem and him
mhm.
saying that
And
and
the
the actual
rain. Yeah.
waterfall at the end
Mhm, mhm,
that is actually referenced in a William Carlos Williams poem where
mhm,
he actually wrote a poem called Patterson
mhm.
about Patterson,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Sarah, would you recommend this movie to a fan of Adam Driver's work?
Oh, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
He's so good in it.
He's really good in it, like you were saying, his micro expressions,
Mhm.
just like
Also, I had this thought while I was watching it where I was like, I don't know Adam. I'm never gonna know Adam. I don't know what he's like in real life, but I had to wonder, like, is this closer to who he really is? And maybe this, raging, screaming, maniac that he sometimes plays is like an id, like it's like a thing that he can tap into, but
mhm.
maybe like in reality, he's maybe closer to this quieter internal artist person, and that when he's acting in some of these roles where he's like letting that out, maybe that's his outlet for letting out some of this. I don't know. It
Yeah.
was just a
I
thought
don't
that I
know.
had. It was a thought that I had. There's no way to prove or disprove it. It was just a thought that I was having as I was
Yeah.
watching it. I was like, I wonder
Yeah.
if this is what he's more like is this person and not
I
these
mean, he
like,
still seemed to be acting in terms of,
oh
like,
yeah.
his expressions were
Mhm.
very, like, definitely having to put some of that on,
Mhm.
but it was done very well. I'm not saying
Mhm.
that it was done
Mhm.
poorly, but I think Adam is such a good actor that, like,
Mhm.
there's no way to know unless you're him.
There's nothing he can't do. Yeah, I would absolutely, I would recommend this to a fan of Adam's work. I'd recommend this to a fan of art. I would recommend this to a
Mhm.
fan of poetry. I personally found it to be really, something that uplifted me. That was just how I felt about it. I feel like this is a movie I could put on maybe if I'm beating myself up too much about my art and my career path and where I am as in my career as an artist. I think I could put this movie on and like it's like like a warm hug. That's how it feels
Yeah.
to me. So I really love it a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, are you ready for moments of thirst?
Mhm.
Hmm. Thirsty. Let's get to it. Did you have any moments of thirst that you wanted to share?
So, I mean, I just thought his personality was thirsty the whole way
Oh
through, just
yeah,
like
I have serious
just
personality thirst the entire time for sure.
I mean, just the sweetness and the gentleness and the um I mean, I even liked that I there was part of me that liked his quietness. I wish that he would have said a little bit more,
Mhm,
just like been a little bit more direct.
mhm,
But other than that, I thought he was very sweet. I thought his
mhm,
expressions were adorable.
mhm.
Um, I thought that,
The scene where he eats the pie, God,
yeah.
I just love it so much the way he's, like, hates it. He hates it so
Mhm.
much, but he's just like and she's just eating this pie like it's
Yeah.
so good, and he's just, like, choking it down because he
Yeah.
doesn't wanna tell her that he doesn't like it.
Yeah. Both both
Ah.
both of our partners would have been like, "Sorry, I can't."
I know,
Like
Chris is like, if it were me, I would say, "Babe, tomorrow you'll make a great pie, but this is not it." Which is the truth. He would be like he'd already have his phone out, and he'd be ordering Uber Eats, before he even finishes the first bite.
Oh god.
So personality thirst. You had like an overall broad
Overall
sweeping thirst.
personality first.
I
There wasn't, like, a moment
yeah.
that stood out to me in particular as a thirsty
Mhm,
moment, but yeah, just in general, his character
mhm.
was a
It's
thirsty
really
one.
when you compare this guy again, Henry McHenry is also an artist, and when you compare these 2 guys, God, what a difference.
Very different.
What a wide difference. I had several moments. I had a lot of moments of thirst. Certainly, I think that his personality is very sexy. But some specifics. There was something about the white T-shirt, especially in that first scene, that like the way I don't know what T-shirt. I don't know where the costume department got this T-shirt, but it's like it was perfectly meant to drape over his torso in the most appealing way possible. So the t-shirt. His hands. There's a lot of hand close-ups in this movie where he's like writing with the
Because the
pen, or he's
watch
the watch, he's looking at the watch, he's got the matchboxes, and I was just like, wow, he has gorgeous hands. So the hands. The deep voice, the voice as he's reading the poems, the narration, like I could just like I want someone to just I know there's like a somewhere out there there's an audiobook that he's narrated, and I feel like I could just put these in my ears and just like fall asleep listening to that gorgeous hot voice. And then I saved the best for last. There was a moment that literally made me squirm. And I mean squirm. And that's one of the mornings when he wakes up his wife by nibbling on her ear. Like that ear nibble was like I still haven't recovered. And I knew it was coming because I've seen people make gifs of it and share it on Twitter. But I don't know, something about seeing it in context with the rest of the movie. Like I have not I'm still in a tizzy over that ear nibble. That's all I'm gonna say. And those are my moments of thirst.
As you would imagine, I'm normally up for pretty much anything in the bedroom,
Mhm.
but I can't tell if what happened was weird or sexy.
Okay, are we ready for some Adam or Andy trivia? I'm excited. What is it gonna be
maybe.
today?
Well, it's gonna be IMDb trivia.
Ooh, good old IMDb.
Yep.
Lay it on me.
So we already knew that Adam had got a bus license, right?
Yeah, I
But
actually
did you
listened to an interview with him talking about this bus license, but do go on.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know this, but the production crew was trying to arrange to get him a license or get him to test or get him trained. And he, without telling anyone, figured it out himself and went to and got himself enrolled in a school and was already taking classes by the time they were like, wait, what
Oh,
happened?
that's
Like,
so
so
sweet.
he like went ahead and got in school.
Oh my God, this big dork and his dedication. I love it
know.
so much.
So,
Also, I don't know if this is in your trivia, but I think that he basically got the license at the very last minute. Like they needed to
yes.
shoot the next day, and he got that
Yes.
license at the last minute.
It was the day before, yeah.
Yeah.
So the poems in the film were written by Ron Padgett, who actually wrote a few of the poems for the film, but also let him use some of his pre-existing poems.
Oh, cool.
And then Jim Jarmusch wrote the little girl's poem.
Aww. I thought that poem was really sweet.
Yeah.
I love that whole scene with the little girl.
I know. I love it too. I think
He's
it's very
so good
wholesome.
with kids, and like the way
He
that he's
is
like
good with
a mother hen just like herding them
Yes,
off the
like,
bus.
let's get off
He's
the
like, "Let's get
streets."
over here." And the kid's like staring off into space, and he's like gently.
Yeah.
Also, when they're like, "What's gonna happen to the bus?" And he's like, "Oh, a big truck's gonna come and tow it away." And the one kid's like, "Awesome."
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah. The conversation between the two construction workers on the bus was a real conversation Jim Jarmusch overheard at a bar, of course.
That's hilarious.
At a bar.
We didn't talk about this, but my favorite part about that conversation is that both of those construction workers are doing that thing where they talk about women in a very objectifying way, but neither of them are confident enough to take any action. Like the way that the guy's like, "Oh yeah, we were making a lot of eye contact." And then the other guy's like, "What happened next?" And he's like, "She went home." And like the other guy's like, "Oh yeah, Rhonda's friend with the blonde hair, she's so hot." And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "She gave me her number." And he's like, "You gonna call her?" And he's like, "I haven't called her yet, but I should." Like the way that they just like talk a big talk, but they're so vulnerable clearly that they don't actually can't do anything about it. That was one of my favorite moments, I think.
Yeah, I think that was very it was like it was like partially cringe, partially like aw, endearing or whatever.
Yeah. And the look that woman gives them as she's leaving the bus.
She's like
the side eye was so good. Wow, that's cool. So that was a real conversation. That doesn't surprise me. I feel like Jim Jarmusch strikes me as the kind of guy who's out there listening, like Paterson is listening. That's kind of
Is he listening, or did he press record on a tape recorder? I would have loved for that to be like verbatim.
Or he's like he's got his phone out and he just kind of slides it closer to them to get some better audio.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, it felt real, but it also felt like it was like perfectly like it was like there was part of it that felt written.
Liberties with it, yeah, I'm sure, because people usually don't have they ramble and stuff. But.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that trivia. That was awesome. That was really fun. Thank you.
Oh, you look awesome. Come the fuck upstairs.
Okay.
But wait, I have to warn you about something.
What?
If you come up here, I'm gonna tie you to my bed and keep you for at least 3 days. I'm just in that kind of mood.
Let's talk about what we're watching next week. We don't need to spin the wheel because we're watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So we're back on our Brooklyn Nine-Nine bullshit. We're back to season 1 of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And so here's what we're watching next week.
Is it 15 and 16?
We are watching, yes, episode 15 and 16. Operation Broken Feather. So here's a log line for that. Jake is hurt when Amy tells him she is considering leaving the precinct, while Terry helps Holt redesign the precinct to make everyone more productive. So that's
interesting.
Maybe some of Jake's feelings for Amy might come up for him in this episode. We'll see. The Party is the next one. The officers in the precinct head over to Holt's house to celebrate his birthday, but they wind up making a poor impression on his husband, which means we get Kevin. And I fucking love Kevin. So I'm pretty excited. Pretty excited about that. Maybe, I bet we'll get Cheddar too. Oh, we're definitely going to get Cheddar if we're getting Kevin.
Yeah.
So that's what we're watching next week. So we're back to Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Sweet.
So, Sarah, thank you for indulging me in discussing this film. I feel like we had a little. I feel like we came to some kind of understanding.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I had like defensiveness about my experience of it because it had hit a little close to home.
I get that.
I guess.
I get that. And I'm sorry that I got so emotional about defending this film. Like, I didn't make this film. Like, why am I so emotional? I don't know. I just like, I think I just deeply connected. Maybe it's like I needed to hear, maybe this is a film I just needed to see right now. Like, maybe it gave me something I really needed. And it's like, you know, I just really reacted strongly to it. Anyway, listeners, Sarah, well, actually, before I give out our social media things, Sarah, would you like to plug your social media?
So sorry, I had a yawn. Yes, I am on Instagram at hedgehodgesbodpos, which is HEDGEHODGES_BODPOS.
Yes.
I post pictures of my makeup, my outfits, my past self when I was more insecure and
your
thinner,
journey,
but not happier.
Yeah. Yes. So your body positivity journey. Love it.
Yep. And every month I'm doing a special themed photo shoot. So, you can look back at January, February, March.
Sneak peek of what next month's photo shoot
April is going to be like a partially inspired by April Fools, partially inspired by Easter. So it's going to be a lot. It's going to be crazy.
Okay. I'm excited.
Crazy, wacky.
And you just did like an outdoor, like at like magic hour with flowers.
Yeah. Start of spring. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. That was fun.
Well, listeners, thank you for joining us to talk about Paterson. We would love to hear from you about your thoughts. And I don't know, maybe your favorite moments or your favorite poem from this movie, or just maybe your thoughts about Paterson, or maybe your thirsty moments. Give us your Paterson love. Tell us what you thought of this movie, or maybe our discussion. Did we get anything wrong? Did we forget anything? You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Adam and Andy Podcast, and you can find us on Twitter at Adam Andy Pod. We love talking to people about Adam and Andy. It's like one of my favorite things about doing the show, besides talking to you, Sarah. Like watching these movies with you and talking to you.
I'm sorry that I'm so like. I feel like it's good though to have like differing opinions about stuff. That way, like it speaks more for like different types of people who watch the movies or something.
Thank you for challenging me. I think it's good that we challenge each other. So listeners, next time you hear from us, we will be talking about Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And in the meantime, I guess, maybe this week, see if you can find a little beauty in the everyday things, the little everyday things.
And think of yourself as an artist, because you are.
That's right.